dad was an archaeologist, and I'm just very passionate about sharing archaeology and what we do. I find in general that people don't really understand what modern archaeology is about. And so I'm going to try to get that across while here. That's my goal.
Fantastic. Take that microphone and try to keep it about a fist from your face.
1 second. We have to. His HDMI is not working. It's not going.
Okay. All right. We had a bit of a technical issue, but we're up. So Flint, you were just explaining how your passion is archaeologist. You're an archaeologist. You have this opportunity to sort of educate people on how archaeology is done.
Yeah, that's my goal, is to try to share what we do, why we do it, and what our goals are with it. Yeah.
Okay. Terrific. And Graham, everybody knows you. We've been on this podcast about 10 times.
Largely thanks to you, Joe.
Oh, very happy. Happy to introduce the world to it. Are we okay, Flint, with the HDMI?
I think we've been doing shows together since 2011.
You, I think, were one of my first real guests. You might be the first real guest, because before that it was just my friends, just comedians.
Yeah.
And it was all in my house. And we ate pizza, and it was fantastic. Jamie's setting everything up, making sure we're good to go. Okay. The way we'd agreed to do this is, Flint, you wanted to open, and you wanted to do about 10 minutes and just sort of explain things.
Yeah.
And so we'll let you do that, and then Graham, you'll have an opportunity to respond.
Yeah, thank you. Jamie, do you mind pulling up my screen?
Here we go.
All right, so look, one of the things that I see when I'm online or in person sharing archaeology is I find it's tough to get across what it is. And so I wanted to start with a fun example. So I understand that maybe not everybody can see the screen. So Joe, do you mind actually just kind of describing what this artifact is?
Oh, you're putting this on me, buddy.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, this says Athenian red figure from 470 BC. And it is two people having sex. It's a man on top of a woman. You see his penis. You see it's yeah, it's very graphic.
It is very graphic. So what do you think this shares about what archaeology is? Any ideas?
Well, I mean, you're finding artwork and parts of civilization that were left behind and, have been around, in this case, since over 2,000 years.
Yeah, and for a long time, scholars thought that a piece like this described sort of life in Athens. And they connected to Athenian texts, sort of like Plato describing people having sex even, right? And on the other hand, however, every single piece of Athenian artwork with graphic sex like this, couples actually fucking with penises and stuff like that, ends up in Italy. It's part of an Athenian pornographic export market. And Kathleen Lynch and Sean Lewis and others have published on this. And so the real point is that what we're looking at is the painters are designing something for consumers in Italy, and particularly in Etruria. And this instead fits better in with telling us about life in Etruscans and the kind of stuff that they show in their tombs, sort of romance between people, or the kind of sexual scenes that they design themselves in Italy as well. And the whole point here is that archaeology is not really about an artifact, it's not about a monument, it's about our patterns. And so when we sort of look at how much archaeology there is in the world, this is a map that shows the Horn of Africa with every single archaeological site that's been surveyed there, and there's 171,000.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
It just looks amazing.
It's just, and this is just because of the terrain. Many of these are tombs, for example, Islamic and pre-Islamic tombs, and so they're visible on the surface. And so
I'm heading home, buddy.
About archaeology,
I'm just heading home a little early.
We're thinking
little
about
early.
big data sets and trying
I got
to
done
analyze
early.
them statistically
Listen to some
and
Joe
understand
Rogan on the way
how
home.
things are put together.
I'll take
And
the
we use
copyright.
innovative technology, sort of LiDAR, lasers from the sky to see these things underground. For example, here are
This is the last Joe Rogan upload.
2018 records 61,480 structures still to be excavated, found with LiDAR and surface survey, right? And so at the same time...
This is it for people listening. It says ancient lowland Maya complex as revealed by airborne laser scanning of northern Guatemala. That's amazing.
Yeah, and so I mean we have this huge data set, and with it we get high resolution. For example, the bottom image in red, it shows looters' trenches, because while there's a lot of archaeology, because people have been everywhere, it's very fragile and it's at risk, and that's something I also want to take some time to get across a bit on here. And my own research is very much big data oriented too. I've studied nearly 1 million animals.
Very tired. No poker tonight either for me. I may get online to troll for some people, but that's about it.
In particular, I also want to get across the kind of precision we have. Right now,
Actually,
do what's called
I'm gonna watch
isotope
this
analysis.
later.
I look at oxygen and carbon isotopes.
I want to listen to. I just realized Callahan was fucking streaming. I'm so fucking busy today. I did see Callahan go live. There he is. Oh, he's already done? He's already done? Back to Joe Rogan.
In the teeth of these animals. And by taking multiple samples on different parts of the teeth, you can see the different areas that I've drilled on that tooth on the right? And what that does is it lets me understand the diet of the animal and where it's moving in the landscape seasonally. So in different seasons of the year, I can understand the kind of ways that people are raising animals. We can do this with human remains too. And we can get this high level of resolution and precision that people don't always realize that we have, right? And so in this case, I'm here to try to discuss with Graham and to test his lost civilization hypothesis. He has this, he's written about it in many books, and he's given many talks here and on Netflix, and he's talked about this idea of a lost advanced civilization from the Ice Age, an advanced civilization that's around the globe, right? And in particular, he thinks there was a global cataclysm at that time, and the survivors introduced agriculture, architecture, astronomy, and arts to hunter-gatherers. And so I'm trying to tackle this with an open mind. And I want to tackle this with the perspective of my own experience and my own expertise. And so in that sense, if you think about what Carl Sagan says, extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence. Graham is in many ways the first person to admit that the evidence he has is fingerprints. It's kind of what he thinks is this technological transmission to hunter-gatherers, but it does not have any direct dated evidence of this civilization. It's, after all, a lost civilization, right? And so what I've been thinking through is, how can my own experience and expertise kind of test this hypothesis in a fair way? That's kind of my goal here while here. And so I'm here to doing a lot of research. I'm here to present what I see are two clear disproofs of a lost advanced Ice Age civilization. And I mean, archaeologists were fairly sure this does not exist. We've been looking for this kind of civilization for several hundred years. This idea of a pre-flood civilization has been around for several hundred years. And so what I want to do is focus on where my own experience and expertise is. My dad was an Ice Age archaeologist. He studied Neanderthal caves. And so I want to dig into some of the stuff that he's excavated and surveyed. These are, for example, 103,000.
Hey, Dirty, it's going good. So been busy as fuck this week. How about you? Obviously you have.
And Graham
I haven't seen much of you.
Ignores it. And he claims that his civilization...
Exactly. It's where the cool kids always end up.
If you hit mute, maybe it might stop.
Yeah, I just muted it.
Okay.
Sorry about that.
No worries. No worries.
If you guys don't
And
have Joe Rogan on Spotify, I feel bad for you.
He ignores most of the evidence for hunter-gatherers in the Ice Age, which is...
Is that he ignores it, or that he doesn't focus on it as much as he's focused on this ancient advanced civilization?
I mean, I think that's one and the same. I think if you're going to look at the Ice Age, we need to look at the totality of evidence to understand it. And so, for example, the reason why the Ice Age civilization isn't there is because it's underwater. It's been, we've had 200 feet of sea level rise since the Younger Dryas, and therefore it's not...
I was just looking for yours
so
too.
I really want to focus on Ice Age coastlines.
I'm trying to catch the end of it.
Coastlines and excavations, underwater evidence from the Ice Age, things like that. These areas where he says that archaeologists don't look, but we are looking, and what we find is the ephemeral traces of hunter-gatherers, rather than some sort of advanced civilization. And so that's one thing I want to show. I want to share this kind of evidence.
Yeah, I'm done for tonight.
It's not, but I think it's the kind of thing that it has...
Had 10 call-offs. Nobody was walking in the office. I dealt with the only one that did. It's like, you know what, I'm out.
So Ice Age people lived, and you're studying these underwater, whatever, what would you call them? Are they cities, or they towns, or they villages?
No, these are, so in this case, this is a really brand new find from like a month ago. It's actually a hunting ground off the coast of Germany.
So it's where they have the camp?
Yeah, or maybe just where they drove game along to hunt them. But most of what's underwater are lithic scatters of stone tools. Stuff like this.
What do you have there?
I have a series of different stuff.
Come on,
I'll show them off a little later. But
Let me
yeah.
touch one.
Yeah, sure.
How old is this?
These are all my.
This episode is brought to you by ShipStation. They're easy to use price solutions into opportunity JR. This episode is brought to you by BetterHelp. Take a minute to check or give you the brief questionnaire. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/JR.
Modern replicas.
Oh.
Made by archaeologists. Some of them made by my dad, and some of them have been made
I thought
by.
you were gonna hook us up with some real stuff.
Sorry, no, I can't remember this.
I have a real arrow. It's from here.
I do have an ancient corn cob right here, from
that's
about
not nearly as
1,200 years
interesting.
ago from the Southern Methodist University Archaeology Collection. I'll explain why this is here in a bit. But
my question for you though was, how much of the ground do you think has actually been studied? When you're looking at these ancient Ice Age Neanderthal populations, or were they Homo sapiens as well?
These are Homo sapiens. This is from, right at the end of the Ice Age. So this is modern humans, yeah.
So these, when you're finding remnants of ancient hunter-gatherers, how much evidence, how much of the ground do you think is studied?
We've definitely not studied most of the ground.
Right.
But as I'll show, we've studied a lot, and we actually put together predictive models on how to find this stuff. And so because it's really expensive to go diving.
Right.
And so
how many dives do you think have been done? Like how many times?
Thousands. Yeah. Oh yeah. And lots of different sites have been found from all over the world.
Specifically, it was done to try to locate these.
To try to locate Stone
ancient
Age,
civilizations.
Ice Age stuff. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And then my second thing I'd like to focus on is food. I am an archaeologist who studies ancient food. I'm an environmental archaeologist. I've studied millions of animal bones.
Hey, same to you, Midwest. Thanks for
collect
dropping in, buddy.
Thousands and thousands of
Sorry,
seeds
missed
like
your
these.
stream. I did drop a
And
like. I
something that people
jumped in and
don't
dropped the
realize
like
is
once I found out it was ended.
Developed sampling methods. And
In fact, I stopped
archaeobotanical organisms, so seeds
Joe Rogan just
from
to
ancient
try and jump in there, and it was already
civilizations
done. So
all over the world. And I want to
have a great night. Get some good sleep.
Domestication
Rest up.
And we can see
We'll see you
where it
tomorrow.
happened in real time, in real space. This sort of evolution from a wild plant to a domestic plant, because that counters Graham's idea that the civilization introduced agriculture. It was not an introduction. It's something that happened in a real space, and we'll track how we can see humans taking control of the reproductive life cycle.
yeah, the at work is nuts.
Yeah, of course.
Is that in a particular region? Like
Why I didn't go
now,
live.
are there people that are living.
I did get some good body camera on
I
it.
wouldn't call it a Stone Age man.
Well, okay.
No.
Let's say people in uncontacted indigenous tribes in the Amazon. I mean, they essentially are living with animal skins and bows and arrows. They're very similar to the way people lived 10,000 years ago.
I think there's plenty of people living today in their traditional
Yeah.
lifestyles. Yeah,
Right, but then there's also people that live in Tokyo.
of course.
Right? So the world is huge. So if you find evidence of agriculture that dates back to a specific period where you can see the wild plants, you can see this transition into domesticated plants, is it possible that we're dealing with a region? And I think part of the theory about the Younger Dryas impact theory was that although it probably devastated the entire human race, it didn't impact all the places the same way. Just like right now, if a volcano goes off in Iceland, we don't even notice it, right? But over there, it's devastating.
Yes, but in this case, what I'm thinking about is, unlike, I know you guys have mentioned at times you can't radiocarbon date stone. We can date these seeds. So we can date that transition from domestic to, or
And
from
what are
wild
the
to
oldest
domestic.
seeds that you found?
Oh, the oldest seeds we have go back tens of thousands of years. The oldest domesticated crops we have go back about 11,000 years.
And where are those from?
From Syria, Turkey, Fertile Crescent. Yeah.
Is it possible that there was domestication before that in other parts of the world?
I'm going to show you why that's not possible.
Okay.
Yeah, that's kind of my goal. Yeah, because and it's not even a disproof of an advanced civilization. It's a disproof of agriculture. Period. In the Ice Age. There's a lot of reasons why there was no agriculture. So I want to get into the weeds on that. Let's say. Yeah.
Okay.
So just to kind of go off, I also want to explain.
More penises.
I know, man.
Flint, what are you doing to us here?
Hey, you got to get the audience somehow.
These are
right?
penis pipes? Is that a pipe?
Yeah, they are.
That's
Yeah.
a rough,
not pipe. It's a
rough
lamp.
pull.
Sorry. Yeah.
Oh, a lamp.
Yeah.
Okay.
But so archaeology.
Those are cool.
I think archaeology should be open. But of course, in the 20th century, the mores of certain Italian museums, like here in Naples, they kept this stuff hidden.
So did they hide this just because of the graphic nature of it?
Yeah, but it's now open for the last 20 years.
Oh.
If you go to the museum in Naples, they have what's called the Gabinetto Segreto, and it has all the erotic art from Pompeii and Herculaneum and things like that. And archaeologists, look, we're underfunded, we're not perfect, but our goal, most of us, is to publish everything open data. And we have at this point millions upon millions of archaeological records available from things like Open Context, the Archaeology Data Service, the Digital Archaeological Record, even the Radiocarbon Paleolithic Europe database. So when you're talking about the Ice Age, we have radiocarbon dates directly dated from 13,000 sites in Europe and Siberia. We have quite a bit of evidence of this ephemeral evidence for hunter-gatherers.
You missed anything, man.
And so the evidence is just...
I had a decent stream on the day shift, but you were busy. But yeah,
see where it leads us.
You haven't missed a
What is
lot.
the oldest evidence for hunter-gatherers?
Bao is still in
God,
Massachusetts, though.
you know,
I think he's going to be there for a bit.
But in terms of what we would consider Stone Age man,
He's been streaming on Smurfwatch.
early Homo sapien. What is like the earliest buildings that we know of? What's the earliest tools that we know of? What do we have?
The earliest tools we know of are many hundreds of thousands of years, right? Before modern.
Similar to the ones you just showed us.
Yeah, well, they're bigger. They're probably, this isn't quite it either. This is a Middle Paleolithic style core that my dad made. But the earliest
I watched him
stones
for a
are
bit
quite
today.
large. But as
He
time
seemed
goes
kinda
on,
bored.
Smaller and smaller. because humans are more
For Bao.
using this raw material, right? Because there's only a few different kinds of stones that you can map. It's what's called a conchoidal fracture. I'll pass some of these around at some point to a show and tell, and I'll show you how we can tell the difference between kind of a man-made stone tool versus just a piece of shadow.
I actually just watched a documentary or a YouTube video, I should say, and it was really fascinating watching them down there.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't think I'm going to be in Pittsburgh this weekend, but maybe next weekend, next
You
Friday,
even have some
or
levels
next
here
Saturday.
that you use for them, right?
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Okay, so continue. So you were
Looking
saying
forward
that,
anyway.
We have a very clear chain. Essentially, you're saying there's a clear chain between what we know of in terms of like hunter-gatherers and then more modern civilizations. It's
No, I don't see it as a linear line. I actually
not linear. That's a bad. But that you know at what point in time it started, I should say.
I think what we can say is we can understand, start pinpointing that it starts with domestication and things like that. But I think
Apparently that's
this
what it
data
is.
set shows is there is
Those jurors can't hear you guys, apparently.
it's actually
Even
very
though Bao's
heterogeneous what happens.
TTSs are
It's
not loud
different in
enough
different areas
to be
of
heard,
the world,
heard
and therefore
inside.
we need to understand the local context.
They've been giving him
And
shit about his
that's really
speaker.
what it's picturing. I mean, in many ways, like I think Graham's TV show is fun and interesting TV, but I think it misrepresents what we think of as the birth of civilization. We don't really write or teach about that anymore. It's very different in different places. Even the very term civilization is something that everybody has a different definition for, so we almost never use it. I never use the term civilization while teaching or writing, for example. It's a term that you can use to mean anything. And so it's like this grand narrative approach to human prehistory is something that's from the 20th century and not really a component of 21st century archaeology, is what I would say.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah. And so I guess to end with a couple of questions for Graham, if he's willing. At different times, he's described that the civilization that he's looking for from 12,000 years ago, it was advanced as, say, our own civilization in the late 18th or early 19th century. And so, you know, as an archaeologist, we study technology, we study the material remains of the past. And so I wonder what we're trying to look for.
Graham
right?
rips
And
this
so
dude apart.
I know that this is kind of how the last conversation with Michael Shermer started. And so I get that, but I do want to just quickly say Graham has acknowledged that there's a good chance there's no metallurgy, for example, with this civilization. He said maybe a decision was made not to use metals. And I'd say we could definitively prove there was no large-scale metallurgy in the Ice Age. If you look at ice cores in the Arctic, right, we can track metallurgy of the Roman period, of medieval periods, based on lead emissions that end up in these ice cores. And there are no emissions from metallurgy in the Ice Age. So we can be sure that there's no global metallurgical civilization that's doing a lot of mining and smelting. Certainly they're not burning fossil fuels like they might
Oh,
do
look at
in
that
the
Mustang.
So we know that could not be.
Yeah.
It would show up in the atmosphere. Likewise, we can think about shipwrecks, right? Graham has mentioned that the bulk of marine archaeology has focused on shipwrecks and not the continental shelves. And so the thing is, at this point, we have something like 3 million shipwrecks from around the world. And so one of my questions for Graham is, if this is a global civilization with ships, why is it that we don't have shipwrecks from this global civilization? I see this as a big, big problem. If we're looking for a civilization that's traversing the oceans, we should find these shipwrecks. And similarly, these shipwrecks are located near the coast. They're located on the submerged continental shelf.
No, it ain't. It ain't no Ford fucking Ranger. That Ranger costs too much. It's gone. So either somebody bought it or they shipped it to someone else.
Monuments of some sort of civilization.
And these shipwrecks, what's the oldest one that we've found so far?
Well, there was one that was just
$50,000
published
Ranger.
about,
Fuck
I think
that.
it was about 6,000-7,000 years ago off the coast of Italy that I saw. Something around there would say what I'd say is around the oldest that we have. Yeah.
And at what point in time these are mostly wooden boats?
Yeah, these are mostly wooden boats. Yeah.
At what point in time would they deteriorate completely?
Well, so actually underwater environments are really good for the preservation of organic remains, which is why we actually get wood in waterlogged environments rather than on land, for example. You either need to be in a really dry environment for wood to preserve, or a really wet environment, or with those seeds I was showing, it needs to be charred. So in general, wood will decay. So, you know, in a lot of underwater environments, it'll just preserve as long as it's in homeostasis.
Which is why that explorer's boat that sank, that hit the... Whose boat was that? You know the boat I'm talking about?
I don't know.
Famous Explorer. It's this beautiful wooden boat that's almost completely intact at the bottom of the ocean. I think it hit an iceberg.
Yeah.
And which Explorer was that, Jamie? You remember that, dude? There's an amazing video of it. It's amazing. Like, they're just zooming in on this boat, and it just looks almost exactly like it looked when it sank, because the water's freezing cold. That's it right there. Look at that. Ernest Shackleton.
Oh yeah, okay, I have seen this. Yeah.
It's incredible. Like the whole boat. Just imagine what it had been on that boat back then.
And I mean, the preservation underwater is amazing. There's this shipwreck off the coast of Italy that I just presented. What was on the Bad Boy of Science YouTube about shipwrecks and stuff. And there's still the vine netting that was holding the Roman cargo was still preserved.
Wow.
And so the just underwater preservation is just freaky.
And is it, would it stay that way for 20,000 years, you think?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. There's this idea that things just decay the older they are, and that's really not true. It depends on the burial environment that they're in. So taphonomy is what archaeologists use to study how things survive and how they are there. And so typically when things are buried, they're very stable. Or when they're, you know, sitting, it depends on where you are on the bottom of the ocean, but typically it's very, very stable. In fact, the worst place to be is the tidal zone. So when sea level rise is very slow and an area is stuck in that tidal zone, things will get battered. But if things are deeply deposited quickly, or sea level rise is very quick, that actually helps preserve stuff. And so that's how we can still find these kind of shipwrecks and ice age sites and other sort of settlements underwater.
Now, what about the shifting of sediment at the bottom of the ocean when you're dealing with things like 10, 20,000 years ago, 30,000 years ago?
Yeah, so there's actually, I was just talking with Jessica Cook-Hale out of Bradford about this. And actually, so she's done some studies off the coast of Florida of sort of hurricanes that are coming in today, because she's excavating Stone Age shell mounds there. And it turns out actually that the hurricanes coming in today really don't disturb them much at all. Yeah, she's published on that. So obviously it's
mostly surface.
Yeah, it's going to depend on the specific environment is the answer. So certain environments, it's not going to preserve. Others, it will. Yeah, it's variable. Is the reality of it.
Was there any other questions for Graham?
Send that to me via text or on Telegram.
You know, archaeologists,
I'm not going to play it here. Now while I'm driving.
We are not trying to keep stuff hidden. If I found Atlantis, I would publish Atlantis. Klaus Schmidt found Göbekli Tepe. He published Göbekli Tepe. And so I think that that's really important. We want to change and rewrite history. That's how we make a name for ourselves. Every article I have published and most of my colleagues have published is something that is adding and changing our picture of the past. We're not locked in on a specific narrative. What we're trying to do is update the picture of the past for each other, for our colleagues, and for people all around the world, to sort of give a sense of, you know, human culture and the diversity of it, the resilience of it, and how we've survived this long, so that we can learn from it.
Get him, Graham.
Okay. Graham.
The second best thing about the NBA playoffs? There's a game just about every day. And the best thing, the points. New 8 hope and void where prohibited. Minimum $5 deposit required. One $3 ticket rewarded and expires in 1 year. See DraftKings.com for details.
Here's a solid tip. Start your day off the right way, like easy and all standard. It's ag.com/.
Flint, first of all, thank you for joining me.
Oh yeah, thank you.
A historic occasion. Because as far as I know, this is the first time ever that a mainstream archaeologist has sat down in a public forum and debated somebody who's looking at the past from an alternative point of view. And I'm grateful to you for sitting in the hot seat and doing that. I think it's really really valuable, and I hope the audience will find it useful. I'm going to try and recall a few of your questions. The lost civilization that I'm thinking of is like a black hole in space to me. It's like something missing in the story of our past. To the extent that I can put forward it, I think we're looking at a civilization like all civilizations that emerged out of shamanism. I believe that they did have rather advanced astronomy and a knowledge of the world, but I don't compare. When I speak of a 19th century level of technology, I'm talking specifically about knowledge of longitude. The longitude problem was not solved by our civilization until the middle of the 18th century. I'm talking about knowledge of very hard to observe astronomical phenomena such as the precession of the equinoxes. That knowledge is normally attributed to the ancient Greeks, but I think there's compelling evidence that it's much earlier than that. I'm not quite sure where to start with my first presentation, but you're telling us that archaeology is very keen on new ideas and wants to really explore and investigate the past. Is that right?
That's my perspective. Yes.
That's your perspective. All right. Let's have a look at Clovis first. Now, tell me what your view on the Clovis first thesis is.
Well, when I was an undergraduate student, I was taught that there were people here before Clovis, and that was over 20 years ago.
Mm-hmm. And so that would be what decade?
That would be the early 2000s.
The early 2000s. So would you?
No,
feel
I won't.
The whole Clovis first idea? Clovis
Guys,
first
you gotta
idea
listen to this.
This culture.
Graham Hancock is the shit, I think. I love him. With his theories, anyway. Yeah, I know. I'm home and all that shit. We don't get to do it together, but if you don't want to do it with me, I can't play a lot of this on my main channel because Joe Rogan just gets you copyrighted. I would literally have to stop it every 10 seconds to discuss it. So, you guys have a good night. Thanks for hanging out on my drive home. I'll see you tomorrow. Peace.